Coach Erik Willimon with the Riley County High School football team joining me on this week's edition of the Coaches Show. Coach, how's the summer going?
The summer's been going great. We've had good attendance. We went to 2 contact camps, did fairly well there, 7-on-7 on Wednesday nights. I feel like that we're growing as a team. We've had consistent attendance at these events, and we've been very consistent with our weight room attendance throughout the entire summer.
Last year was a little bit of an up and down year for you guys, but you finished above 500. What did you like from last season?
Last year was a tough year. It was kind of a double-edged sword. The fact that we did finish with a winning record, which we hadn't the previous year, but the loss to season and near season ending injuries to a couple of our guys, 2 seniors, Chase Woodard and Eli Harmison. Eli did come back the last 2 games. We lost Chase throughout the season, and those were guys that had started 3 years for us prior to. I liked how we battled adversity and adapted to our roster. I thought the guys adapted very well in the huddle. When you have a signal caller like Eli that had started 3 years since he was a sophomore, he's no longer there. It takes there's some growing pains there, and I thought Kadrick came in and did a good job of not just being a game manager, but being a guy that could win us ball games. And we saw that, early on. And then it kind of caught up to us when we started getting into district play. We were fortunate enough to get that last win. Disappointed we didn't qualify for playoffs. First time in a long time we hadn't done that, but it does give us something to work towards.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about those things to work towards, on the flip side of the positives from last season, what are some of the biggest things that you guys as a program are looking to improve upon this season?
The big thing is just trying to, and I think every coach does this, is just trying to prevent injuries as best as possible. A school our size, or just a school, any size for that matter, when you have key pieces go down, preventing injuries, and then also on the backside is just making sure that your roster is as prepared to deal with those injuries as possible. And I thought last year our depth began to show through. Kind of the silver lining with those injuries is that we played a lot of young kids, a lot of sophomores, played very meaningful minutes in some big time games. Our schedule, and I think every high school coach in the state of Kansas will say that they got a tough schedule. But when you look at our league and you look at our schedule, there's no weeks off. There's no working ahead. Every game, it is truly, your season is defined one game at a time. And our roster development and our depth, I'm really pleased with where that's at, especially along our front, our defensive and offensive front. I feel like that can be a big strength for us going into this campaign.
So with those kids who are coming back, what is the big motivating factor for them? Is it that a lot of young guys, these young guys that got to play last season, they got a little, bite of the pie, and now they're hungry for a lot more? Or is it missing the playoffs for the first time in a long time and wanting to get back to that point?
These aren't things that we specifically talked about, on an individual basis, but it's something we talked about, in the huddle, when we break things down in the weight room, when we break things down after a team practice. And that's to hang a banner. If you go into our north gym, our main gym, you'll see the state championship banners and state runner-up. Riley County's never won a state championship. Obviously, that's something that we're constantly pursuing. But you can also see every year that we've qualified for playoffs and things like that. And one thing that we talk about, and we talk about this with every group, but this group is kind of really taking a hold, making it their own, is to hang a banner, to put your stamp on the program, to put their brick in the foundation of Riley County football. And I feel like we have I feel like this team has the components to potentially do that.
Two of the guys who poured a lot into the program and are no longer there are Eli Harmison and Jace Woodard. How do you replace those two guys who did so much in their time with Rock County football?
It's hard to replace. It's those are the types of guys that are irreplaceable. Brett Hopper is another one. They were everyday guys, and it was not just everyday guys, but they were also, they were all league guys. They were all state guys. And you can't truly replace a graduating senior. You fill in as you go. And with some of the injuries and some of the setbacks that we had during the season, it forced some of our young kids to play more meaningful minutes. And during that time, unfortunately was because of injuries. They took ownership of the position that they filled in for. It became their position. And it helped us create more depth moving into the latter part of the season, and then moving into the off season and into the preseason. We've had guys that have we've been pleasantly surprised with how they performed over the summer and earned some starting spots and filled in some gaps that we didn't truly have answers for, as we were like breaking down and doing all of our postseason stuff.
That was going to be my next question. Who are some of the guys who have shined the most over the summer? Who are going to be the big dogs on this year's Riley County football team?
Oh boy, that's the $1 million question, because they're all going to be listening. I can't. It's hard to just pick one, but I would say Rylan Woodward. He's been a 3-year guy. He finally gets. He was playing behind Sam Allen. That's another graduating senior. I forgot to mention he was a stud for us. For 4 years. Rylan, it's his turn. It's his show. And he's done very well. I think and he's going to do very well, especially with our front. You're looking at Martin Lecker, who was a second team Big East all league lineman as a center. There's a couple others that are coming back: Slade, Griffiths, Noah Schmelsley, Caden Hatch. And Nathaniel Hammond, who was injured, who came on later in the year, last 2 games, and was able to play. We have a lot of experience returning, and 3 of our 5 starting linemen are going to be juniors. So we have some room to work with there. And then, Brendan Woodard and Kadrick Woodard, they're twins. Kadrick came in and filled in for Eli after Eli went down against Jeff West in week 1. Brendan had been a starter penciled in, and then really kind of came on and led the team in sacks there towards the latter part of the year, as we had to kind of move those people around. As I go through and I look at our list, Alvy Morales is a kid that has really shown up and earned a starting spot with the way he's performed in the weight room. During our contact camps. I mean, he was unblockable at times against some of the teams that we played, and we felt really good about that. And then we have some young guys that we're going to have to step in. You're asking Carter Maxwell to come in and be more of an offensive player. He's been a 2-way player for us for the last year. Evan Widman is another one, big, tall, rangy kid. Hopefully we can stretch the defense out a little bit and also play linebacker for us. And then Chase Lundberg, again, I could spend more than the 10-minute allotment to go through all of our kids. But Chase Lundberg he's a big boy. He's hard to move. Probably the highlight was him against Oskaloosa returning a 49-yard interception return for a touchdown. And so he's kind of still playing off that high. But Bodie Mojo is going to come in. We're going to move him from line to more of a tight end H spot. And again, Trey Weber, who was a threat for us on the outside and one of our better corners, along with Logan Wag on the other corner spot. We feel like we have some good pieces there. There is going to be, obviously with any team, a growing process. especially when we, start operating under duress when coaches aren't out there like they are in contact camps and the jamboree type of scenario. So anxious to see how that works. Anxious to see how our senior leadership steps up. I feel like we have some good senior leaders. Jaron Vega is another one of our seniors that is kind of really taking on that leadership role. He'll play defensive end for us, high motor guy. And I'm sure that I'm leaving some kids off by accident, but those are some of our guys that have been everyday guys throughout the summer. And we're looking forward to that once August 18th gets here too.
Fantastic. One last question for you, Coach. What's left to accomplish for you guys as a staff, as a team, as a program through the end of the summer?
As we go, just making sure we don't trail off. We had, last week was the last week that we had, true contact time with the kids. That shut down on Sunday, and so now it's just working with small groups. Kids, right now, the biggest thing is the kids go out and get to work on their own, more so than they have been. They kind of take ownership of the team, continue where we left off, and not only continue where we left off, but go ahead and move forward. Some of our offensive and defensive schemes, and just taking ownership as they are going to have to when they're out there, in the huddle on them when the lights are shining bright on a Friday night and the coaches aren't out there to, put them in, the specific spot. And so I think from my standpoint as a head coach, that's what I'm looking forward, driving by the high school of an evening, looking over at the practice field and seeing the boys out there getting after it before, it's go time.
It is almost go time, Coach. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the WIBW Coaches Show. That's all for tonight.